Any plans on buying something else? I'd love a modification video like you did with your motorised bikes, mods for power and testing. That's the fun part. I do have a second bike sitting there, a 2014 KTM 390 Duke. For now, that's as far as my bike plans go. Modification video, I've got playlists specifically about the modifications I've done on this bike. I'll post the link in the comments. Talk about the 2026 model and do a video showing top speed and resuming all the mods. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the newer model, so all I'll be doing is stealing opinions of other motor vloggers. But I can definitely point you in the direction of a few good videos I found. I'd rather not just copycat what other people have said about this bike. But yeah, I've come across a couple of channels that have covered the newer model pretty extensively. Big one. Do you need a motorcycle license to ride a 125cc in Australia? And do you have to go to a motorcycle inspection every year? Here in Belgium, you can ride a 125cc with max 15 horsepower with a car license if you got that before 2011, and we don't need to go to a motorcycle inspection. Yes, the motorcycle licensing in Australia is quite strict compared to Europe. In my state of Victoria, you must be 18 years of age before you can get your motorcycle learner permit, even if you already hold a car learner permit, which you can get at 16. However, one advantage we have as learner riders is the Learner Approved Motorcycle Scheme, or LAMS, which allows us to ride any LAMS bike, which is defined as almost any bike up to 660cc capacity with a power to weight ratio of 150 kilowatts per tonne, or about 48 horsepower in practice. Or look at it like 15 kilowatts per 100 kilograms. The CB125F, for example, has, they say, 10.7 kilowatts for its 117 kilograms. So it's not even close to the power limit for a learner rider. Technically speaking, you can ride a LAMS bike which on paper has an exceptionally powerful engine so long as it's heavy. For example, the LAMS approved Honda CB650R weighs about 208 kilograms and has 48 horsepower. Unrestricted, they say about 96 horsepower. Yet the 390 Duke I have sitting here is also LAMS approved, has approximately 44 horsepower, but only weighs 140 kilograms. So big capacity LAMS bikes aren't always the best option if you really want to feel fast. You know, it's pretty hard to get onto a motorcycle in Australia compared to, you know, not needing a license at all for a small bike. It is fairly difficult to get your license, your motorcycle license in Australia initially, but once you have it, you really don't need to think about it ever again. We don't have annual courses, and we don't have a tiered licensing system. So we don't have, I think, what in the UK they have, what do they call it, Mod 1 and Mod 2, where you're restricted first to these 125s and then to the, you know, these, what I guess what our LAMS restricted bikes are, you know, 48 horsepower for a heavy bike, for example, and then unrestricted. But for us, we can ride up to 660cc for 3 years and then whatever we want, and we never have to think about it again. Will you ever sell your bike to get another one? It would need to be something pretty special to trade in my CB125F. I do have the 390 Duke, which suits me well enough for now for riding something a bit faster. Ever found out who stole your motorised bikes? Well, this is one for people who've been around in the channel since 2021 to 2022 when I was doing motorised bike videos. I woke up one morning to find that all my bikes have been stolen. I know exactly who stole my motorised bikes. It was the kid down the road and his mate from Maryborough, who I helped fix their own motorised bike when it broke down right outside my house. I got their bike running while I was telling them about my own bikes, hence the spare parts I had to help them out. The very next day I was cleaned right out of 3 running motorised bikes, 2 not running motorised bikes, my $3,000 giant Talon E mountain bike, and my burnt out AKES 500 watt scooter. Of course I told the cops who it was, and of course they did nothing. So I never ever got anything back from being wiped out. This one's from Shep. How did I get started, or how did you get started in mechanickery? Are you self-taught, or did someone show you the basics? A very young Nicky enlisted into the Australian Army as a mechanic. Although I didn't technically finish my qualification before discharging early from the Army, much of my mechanical knowledge comes from there. The rest comes from a willingness to break things to figure it out for myself. What's the most ambitious or most challenging thing you've attempted? The most ambitious and challenging thing I've attempted was building my Mark V hybrid, which was a 2-stroke electric 2-wheel drive motorised bike. A BT 100 2-stroke drove the rear wheel, and a 1000 watt hub drive drove the front. 2 separate throttles, a twist on the right for the 2-stroke and a thumb throttle on the left for the e-bike. It was a challenge to ride to learn simultaneously with 2 throttles, but once you got the hang of it, it was quite a smooth experience, and it was an excellent bike to ride. You could launch from a standstill with the e-bike and then ease the clutch out on the 2-stroke when you were up to speed, so no more straining on the pedals trying to get the engine to fire. However, it was the 2-stroke vibrations that eventually broke the bill. The battery contacts broke multiple times due to vibrations, and eventually even the battery power switch broke. I did have plans to replace the switch before the bike was stolen, but I never got around to it, obviously. Are there any jobs you don't think you'd be willing to attempt? It's more like jobs I've been putting off because I don't want to do them, rather than be willing to attempt because I haven't done them before. Like the fork seals on the 390 Duke, for example, or bleeding the brakes on the CB 125F. These are jobs that I know that I have the technical ability to do, but for some reason I have a real mental block about actually going and doing. I mean, look at what I managed to do with the Honda. I replaced the piston, mucked up the timing, bent an exhaust valve, and then fixed it all myself. So the technical know-how is there, it's just I've got to talk myself into getting out there and actually just doing it. Thoughts on e-bikes? I love the concept of e-bikes, by which I mean full-size motorcycles and not push bikes. But I think they'd be better suited to building a hybrid bike similar to what I did. The CB 125F with an electric hub motor to help it maintain speed up the hills would be incredible. Any interests or hobbies besides bikes to share? Besides bikes? Sure. I'm a gamer nerd at heart and I love game design too. Back in high school, I was writing interactive fiction. Think of it like text-based adventures, you know, go north, fight goblin, blah 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 type based thing. Using a system called Adrift, which was the Adventure Developer and Runner Interactive Fiction Toolkit, and I think I've got that right, Adrift for short. Then I discovered RPG Maker 2000 and fell in love with it. I spent years making a game on this platform, which is available on itch.io. I'll put the link down below. And recently got into the program, seeing as I have so much downtime these days. Yeah, I started working on a new little project game just to fill in my spare time. Like I said, I'm not all bikes, I'm a big gamer too. I actually tried to launch my channel as a gaming channel, but I don't know, I never found my audience and it never quite took off. Then I tried to launch it as a kitchen channel, a cooking channel. In the kitchen with Nick, and again I just never found my audience and the kitchen videos never took off. There is a playlist of those videos which I'll put down below. Would you ever sell the CB and KTM to buy a Honda GB350 or even a MIDI maxi scooter? Well, if money was no object and I could have my bike of choice, now these answers might surprise you considering how much I love my little 125. My first bike of choice would have been the Kawasaki Ninja 650. The Ninja has always had a place in my heart. It was the first bike I remember seeing as a young teenager that made me sit up and go, "Rrrr." Insert heart-eyed emoji here. In the scooter category, my dream ride is the Yamaha Tri-City 300. While it's neither fast or particularly exciting for most people, there's just something about the Tri-City scooters that tug at my heartstrings. I do love a quirky underdog. It's not a common sight in Australia, as its intended market does not exist here. I believe in Europe you can ride these three-wheeled scooters on a car license. But here you still need a motorcycle license to ride one, and as such, not worth the almost $14,000 price tag for a new one. That brings me to one of my favourite gripes about Australian motorcycle licensing. The quirky Can-Am, think of the Spider and the three-wheeled Duvalakis. Again, these three-wheeled vehicles can be ridden on a car license in Europe, but not here. Here, they are registered as a car, but you need a motorcycle license to ride one, but you cannot take your motorcycle license test riding one. I'd like to give one of these Can-Ams a go one day, but I don't think I'd want to live with one. Alright, final question. Let's hear about your life from beginning to now and all your bikes and your beautiful Australia. Well, I'll give you the short version. I've been married, divorced, had kids, served in the Australian Army, did nothing, went nowhere. I worked as a wood machinist in a furniture factory for most of my time. I've done some light truck driving here and there, and now I'm a stay-at-home parent while my partner brings home the bacon. I'm now living with a fairly serious medical condition. I have blood clots on my lungs, so I'm not making as much content as I was, but I'm at the point where at least I can go out for a ride every now and then. But I won't be running marathons anytime soon, let me put it that way. Clots on the lungs are no joke, and I usually only get a few hours of activity every day before being left sore and out of breath. But here I am, still making content, taking it easy. Long term, I really have to take it easy until at least February next year before I have my next medical review to see how the clots are dissolving. Once they're under control, it should be more or less business back to usual, and I can start planning some big full-day rides again. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions for me to answer and to make this video possible. I had planned to try and answer these on the go, but I realised some of my answers were a bit too long and complex. So yeah, voiceover it is. And I hope you've enjoyed the scenery from this ride. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't do what Nick does.